Here we are deep in the Khumbu region of Nepal, crossing the Hillary Suspension Bridge on our way to Everest Base Camp. This bridge is about 400 feet up and is one of many bridges that you cross on the way to base camp. It's a little bit scary as the bridge kind of moves back and forth with the wind, and you have to share it with other animals and other trekkers coming through. So a few hours earlier, we learned that a porter, maybe similar to this, carrying these enormous loads into Everest Base Camp for the Everest climbing season, encountered one of these guys crossing the bridge here and was nearly flipped over the side. He was flipped up in the air, and the strap of his backpack, that pack there, caught the railing, and he was dangling on that side, and people ran and rescued him and pulled him back up. So again, on the way into base camp, there's many things you got to be aware of, and one of them is obviously sharing the road with many animals that are hauling in gear into the base camp area. Our trip began about 7 days earlier in the city of Kathmandu. It's a city of about 3 million people. All of Nepal, there's about 30 million people. Really a very interesting city. There are 7 UNESCO National Heritage Sites there, so a lot of culture and a lot of things to do there just before you head into the Khumbu region. We stayed in a very nice hotel called the Yak and Yeti. And as I mentioned, we did a few sightseeing things for a few days, seeing some of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. This happens to be the famous monkey temple there in Kathmandu. We also got our Tika blessing from the Hindu sadhus while we were there, giving us good luck and wishing us a safe passage on our way to base camp. So here we are on our way from Kathmandu into Lukla. You have to go back to the Kathmandu airport. And there are several ways to get into Lukla. One is the old-fashioned way, which is a trek, and that takes about a week. Or you can fly into the airport, which has been designated really as one of the most dangerous airports in the world. It's got a very short runway that jettisons off a cliff. So you can either go in there by fixed wing plane or by helicopter. We're having to go in by helicopter, which is probably a little bit better because you can fly in under more adverse weather conditions. If the clouds start coming in the region, your flight may get delayed where the helicopters can land in a little bit more inclement weather. So it's a really cool, maybe half-hour helicopter ride from Kathmandu into the airport at Lukla, where you land at the Tenzing Hillary Airport. Tenzing and Hillary were the first climbers to summit Everest back in the late 50s, and this airport is obviously named after them. So once in Lukla, this is the route we take into Everest Base Camp. It's about nearly 40 miles, and we start here in Lukla, and we gradually take this trail here. We can see my cursor all the way up to Dingboche, to Chendung, to Loboshe, and the town of Gorakshep, which is really the last little settlement before you get over to Everest Base Camp. There's also Kalapatar, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. That's the 18,000 foot 500 mountain we climb to get the best view of Everest. You really can't see Everest from Everest Base Camp, so you have to go back up to Kalapatar to see it, which I'll show later. So the trip took about 13 days from from Kathmandu to get up to Everest Base Camp. And one of the things that people ask is, what about the altitude? I live in Sarasota, Florida. We're starting at elevation 0. And you can see we're gradually climbing every day. We're stopping in some towns for a few days. And it's really an acclimatization profile that's been set up to help really somebody come from sea level to be able to go up and function at the altitudes that we're going to be going up to. It's a well-documented path, and you can't go fast. You could not just, even if you couldn't just come into Lukla and quickly shoot up to Everest Base Camp, you really wouldn't feel very well going up to 17,600 feet that quickly. So one of the things that people always ask me is, can I do Everest Base Camp? What's it going to take to do Everest Base Camp? And I did it at age 63. And it's very doable for anybody, but there's a few things you need to consider. Number one is, as I mentioned earlier, is altitude management. At 20,000 feet, which is not quite here, the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere is literally half of what it is here at sea level. And it's really, the composition is the same. It's still 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen, but there's just less partial pressure. So that same amount of air that would fill up a glass at sea level would fill up 2 glasses at 20,000 feet. And again, we're going up to 17.5 at Everest Base Camp. So it's just there's less pressure to push the oxygen into your bloodstream through your lungs. So that's really the consideration. But again, there's all sorts of remedies. What we talk about here is you got to go slow. We're going up slowly. There's pressure breathing. You can take some drugs called Diamox and just conserve your energy. Just slow and easy. Follow the acclimatization protocol and you'll be fine. The second thing really is the right mental attitude. I think the number one thing is just take care of yourself. Everybody wants to help others, and that's a great thing. But as they always say on the airplanes, when the masks come down, put your own mask on first before you put the mask on for the person sitting next to you or your child. So it falls in line here. If you take care of yourself and you're in good health, then you can have the option to help other people. But that's really the key thing is making sure you're eating well, you're drinking well, listening to your body and listening to the guides. But there will be some suffering on the trip. There are parts of it that are not easy. Don't get me wrong, this is not a walk in the park, and you're going up 17,500 feet over almost nearly 40 miles over the course of a week and a half. So there are points in time where it will be tough. The last thing is having some level of cardiovascular fitness, either running, walking, cycling will help. You have to do some kind of training to be able to go. You just can't walk off the street and go do it, but it's all very doable. And again, I did it at age 65, 63, and it was fine with some proper training. And again, keeping in mind these considerations here. So this is us at the trailhead getting ready. Pasang Lemu Gate. Pasang was the first Nepalese woman to summit Everest. I think she did it in 1993 at age 32. Unfortunately, she died on the way down. Didn't make it, but again, this gate is a memorial to her. And it's really the entrance from Lukla onto the trailhead, taking you towards Everest Base Camp. And as I mentioned earlier, again, all sorts of animals you have to share the road with. And again, luckily our porter there survived that scare, but you just have to be cognizant of all these animals on their way to Everest Base Camp, hauling loads for the climbers. Especially near Lukla, where it's a little bit more civilized. As families live there, and again, the children are really super cute. There's another picture, but again, these are families that live there, probably work off the tourist trade. I mean, again, the season though for doing Everest Base Camp is the spring season, which is really kind of April, May, and June, and then there's a fall season, September and October. So it's a pretty short season, but again, they will capitalize off the tourist industry, which is obviously this region. It's a big part of their economy. This is one of the first tea houses we stayed at. So tea houses, think of it like as a bed and breakfast. They're not heated. They have a nice restaurant and then some unheated, some bunk houses that you would sleep in. So again, nice accommodations, clearly beats staying in a tent. And this is us at our first tea house. The tea houses closer to Lukla at the beginning are definitely nicer than the ones that as you get farther back into Gorupshep and away from civilization. They become a little bit more rustic, but again, I found them to be very good. During that, you meet some really interesting people. So this is Sari Sharan. She's the first Iranian woman to have climbed all 7 summits. And she was also starting the Everest aftershock move. So she was up there in the 2015 earthquake. And we happened to run across her at this first tea house. That's my climbing partner, Mike Roberts, who posed with a picture with her. If you're into the climbing community, all the famous climbers and guides you meet along the way up into the Everest region during this time of year. It's really pretty fantastic. And this is us. This kind of be typical of what we would do. This is inside a tea house at dinner, family style dinner. There's a menu. You can see there's a stovepipe. So these rooms sometimes are heated. They use yak dung. There's really not a lot of trees and timber in the region, so they'll burn yak dung. You get some heat in the central area. You can see we're all wearing coats, and it's not toasty by any great stretch in time, but it takes a little bit of chill out of the air. And so these dinners were a great way to socialize and meet with the team. And again, I forgot to mention earlier, but it's a really big chunk of the experience is meeting these people. None of us really knew each other, and getting together and bonding as a team and having this shared experience of trekking up to Everest Base Camp together. And this would be what a typical meal would be. It's called dal bhat. It's a lentil stew. And then oftentimes it'll have chicken and rice. The dal is the stew and the bhat is the rice. And then there'll be some other vegetables. But this is a Nepalese staple, especially as we near the town of Lukla, you could get other things off the menu. They'd have pancakes or some other more Western food. But as you got farther and farther back, this is pretty much what you ate. But it was very tasty and very nutritious. This would be what the bunk room would look like. Again, beds. We kept our sleeping bags. We had a roommate, Mike, who was my climbing partner as well, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But yeah, it was very nice. And again, as I said before, sure beats staying in a tent. We had some training. So this trek was going into Everest Base Camp, but Mike Roberts and I were going to go on and do some climbing with Vern Tejas, who's a very famous guide. That's his wife, Carol, on the right. Vern has done all 7 summits 10 times. So he's one of the most accomplished guides in the world. And so once we got to Everest Base Camp, Mike Roberts, who's out there on the left, we're going to go off and climb Lobuche and Island Peak with him. So we were getting some training and doing some knots at the dinner table here. And I do forget this because I wasn't really paying attention, and Vern asked me to tie this certain knot, and I said I can't. And he lit into me and saying, I never want to hear you say it, you can't again, or you won't be climbing with me. It set the tone for the rest of the climbing expedition anyway. Definitely a wake-up call. The whole team was a little, wow, okay, this is real. And there are some dangers here. You have to pay attention and follow your guides implicitly during the trip. Even on the on the trek going in, let alone the high altitude climbing we were going to do later in the trip. This is Namche Bazaar. It's a very famous town there. It's a market. And that's where a lot of the folks go to get their food and vegetables. And there's a big market there several times a week. But again, we woke up to snow. We're in late March, early April here, and the weather conditions are in the mountains, they're variable, and you have to be prepared for all this. And so we had a nice dusting of snow. We actually stayed in Namche an extra day because we wanted to wait for the trail to clear of snow before we went back on. We didn't want anybody to slip and fall. Not everybody had spikes or cleats, and so we just wanted to make sure that it was safe to go on up on the trail. But anyway, again, the weather conditions are variable. You're in the high altitude mountains. Sagamura means, it's the Nepalese name for Everest, and Tommy Gunderson, hopefully I pronounced that right, set up this in 2015, and it's what we call a workshop that they take recycled trash and make artwork out of it. So one thing we noticed on the way up to Everest Base Camp is extremely clean. There's trash receptacles everywhere. He actually gave us trash bags to carry stuff out with. And so there's this whole effort to keep, because you can imagine the number of people that trek up to Everest Base Camp. And it's pretty close to being spotless up along the trail. And he, again, has led a lot of that effort. And that tree right there is from recycled plastic that they make. So there's a whole bunch of artwork that they've done using recycled plastic materials that people give to him out on the trail. So it's, again, a really cool place to go. Now we're in Tengboche. So this is on the way. This is the largest Buddhist monastery in the region, and the area is just spectacular. A lot of, again, in the mountains here, these are all Buddhists that really came in from Tibet. And so there's numerous monasteries throughout the region. This happens to be the largest. We went inside. This was what happened to be accommodations for one of the monks where they would stay. And we were privileged to go and see that. We also received a blessing by the monks at this temple as well. This is a picture from Tengboche. I think it was just a spectacular place, seeing these mountains in the background. Off to the left, there's a stupa, which is one of the Buddhist temples, not the right word. Buddhist ornaments, again, it signals the 13 steps to enlightenment. There's a whole story behind how those are, what they signify. So this is, again, from our tea house. This is out the window of the bedroom that I stayed at the tea house, and just, again, spectacular view. There is farming there, by the way, just to digress a little bit. The potatoes are a large crop, and they farm these the good old-fashioned way our ancestors did in the 1800s. And again, you can still see there's some snow on the ground, but they're out there farming, plowing the fields. Again, potatoes are a large crop in this area, in this region. So we're heading on our way up. This is my favorite mountain in all of Nepal. It's Amadablam. You can see by the two peaks there, it's just spectacular with the snow. And you can see it's very windy at the top. That little white, all that white stuff is where the snow from the wind blowing off. There's probably 70 to 80 mile an hour winds that are blowing off the top of that mountain right with the snow. And again, this is another one of the stupas I talked about earlier. Again, set in the backdrop, just spectacular all throughout from the Buddhist culture. And again, this is a very iconic picture of Amadablam with the stupa there in the foreground. And again, the same picture right there along the trail. And that's what the trail looks like, by the way. Not all of it's like that, but you can see it's pretty well paved. There's steps. Not all of it's like that. There is some more rustic trail, but a lot of it is very well maintained and walled. And so it's not like you're on, maybe like on a trail in the Adirondacks or whatever. These are all very well maintained. There's a lot of traffic that goes into Everest Base Camp every year. And again, very nice. This is the Everest Memorial to the people who have died on Everest. And there's a whole bunch of people there. I mean, these are mostly for the climbers and the Sherpas. People say there's about 300 permits issued to climb Everest every year. And so each climber also has a Sherpa, so there's 600, and there's a whole bunch of support staff. So probably in any given season, there's maybe 800-900 people on the mountain trying to climb Everest. And that season is really May and June. They're coming up in April, but the climbing season is May and June. So it's not a large number. People think Everest is all overcrowded and all these long lines, but the reason for that is because there's limited days where they can actually go reach the summit. Like the opening day of trout season. First nice day, everybody wants to be out there. And so similar to this. So if our guide, who I know waits till a little bit later in the season, later in May and early June, and it's really pretty empty. You can climb up without a lot of traffic. So a lot of that stuff in the media is a little bit overhyped about the traffic on the mountain. But that said, the dangers do exist. You figure probably 15 to 20 people die, sometimes more every year trying to climb Everest. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. It can be ice falls for the Khumbu region. It can be exhaustion higher up. It can be falling into a crevasse, many things. So it's a very dangerous mountain to climb. All these big mountains are dangerous to climb. And so this is a memorial. Mainly, a lot of it's for the Sherpas, again, for all the Nepalese who really make this all possible. Without the Nepalese Sherpas, none of this climbing would be possible. They are really amazing individuals and athletes and climbers that allow us Westerners to come into this area, because without them, none of this would happen. This happens to be Scott Fisher. His memorial, Scott Fisher, famous from the 1995 Into Thin Air, where he passed away. And it's, again, Into Thin Air. Krakau's book depicts that whole story with Scott and his team. So we're continuing in. The scenery is just beautiful. This is what we're looking at walking up. It's just truly spectacular. Our guide, Vern, is famous for his guitar, so he likes to sing and play the guitar on the way walking up. It's pretty surreal.
Good luck. Thank you, man.
Again, he would do that a lot of the way, and Vern has been going up there for, I don't know, probably 30 or 40 years. So everybody on the trail knows Vern, and he stops and talks. And it was really a great experience doing the trip with Vern and Carol on the way up. So again, another view on the way in. And finally, we make it to base camp after 13 days. It's 70,600 feet. This is the famous rock. We all made it. Again, there were some struggles along the way. Some people did get a little altitude sickness, and we had some hurt knees and a few things here and there. But for the most part, nothing serious. And it's clearly was just such an adventure being with this team and the friendships and the people, the friends you bond. I still keep in contact with several of the folks and climb with them elsewhere. So it's a great experience. Again, one more picture of myself here at Everest Base Camp with the yak below. One thing I did mention, though, is that you can't really see Everest from Everest Base Camp. It's just by the way it's positioned. So you have to go climb up Kalapatar. And this is us, the whole team, on the way up Kalapatar. And that's Everest in the background. Just to put that in perspective, this right here, we're probably at about, Kalapatar, this is probably like 17,500 feet. Everest in the background there is over 29,000 feet, literally 2 miles higher than us. Just to put it in scale, how large this area is. So again, Everest is sticking in the background, nearly 2 miles higher. And that's myself with Vern with that. So I was a little bit nervous about climbing this Kalapatar because we ended up making the summit. Only 3 of us made it, ended up making it at the top. It's 18,500 feet. I was figuring if I couldn't climb this one, we were going on, as I mentioned, to climb some other peaks in Nepal after this. Lobuche, which was going to be the next day we were going to head over to, as well as Island Peak. And so I was a little bit nervous about climbing up. As I said, I can't make it up this 18,500 peak, which was a little bit strenuous at the end. It was pretty icy. We had to put micro cleats on, and I was a little bit tired when I got to the top. But the good news is Mike Roberts and I and Mark, another member of the team, made it, 3 of us with our guides and Sherpas, or our guides and porters. It was a great experience. And again, the view, there's Everest in the background. The view is great. This again is us up at the top of Kalapatar. And that's another picture of me up at the top of Kalapatar. You can see I'm getting a little growth there. I haven't shaved for a week or 2, and it's chilly. I'm wearing a parka, and I don't know, it's probably 25 degrees, typically pretty breezy up there. And you got to wear really good sunglasses, by the way, too. The sun is very intense at that altitude because the air is thinner, and also you're getting a lot of reflection off the snow and ice. So you got to have really good sunglasses or you'll burn your eyes. So after that, Mike and I went off and climbed, and we were out there another week, and then we ended up circling back and coming back, and then having a dinner with the original Everest Base Camp team. So they headed back to Lukla after that Kalapatar picture there, and then we went off for a few days. We ended up rendezvousing back in Kathmandu and had a celebratory dinner at the end. So overall, again, a great adventure. Highly recommend the Everest Base Camp trip. Was definitely a bucket list item for me. You don't have to do the climbs at the end. We just have climbed all over, which I'll share within some other videos coming up. But that was just an icing on the cake. The Everest Base Camp trip, both from a cultural perspective in Kathmandu and through the mountains, meeting Nepalese people, the Sherpa guides, the scenery is spectacular, and really the friendships you make and the bonds you make with the teammates. It's just an unbelievable experience that I'd highly recommend. So do a little training, get your backpack on, and walk around a bit or do a little running, and go make it happen. Talk soon.